I think Buffalo should be favored. I just do. And understand that while the Ravens do play to a high power rating, and they have for 2 years now, in the postseason, Will, these games aren't played on calculators.
What's going on, everyone? Bearbets Podcast. It's Fallica, Geoff Schwartz, soon to be joined by Sammy P and Will Hill for the Gambling Group Chat. Jeff, they say it's the best NFL weekend of the year. Divisional weekend, 4 games, wildcard winners against the division winner. They got by and have home field advantage. And it's weird. We got 2 games that kind of feel like we kind of know the winner, maybe. I don't know. Two teams favorable more than a touchdown team that feels like they're going to be a trendy home dog, and the game that a lot of people are calling the Super Bowl, Jeff. Did you know the Super Bowl is being played in Buffalo this weekend?
I did, yeah. It's such a great weekend that we have all these massive spreads. It's such a prime weekend to watch football. But look, the NFL can be pretty simple sometimes, Bear. Look at the quarterbacks playing right now, right? Patrick Mahomes. For as off as Stroud was this season, he's still considered a young, talented quarterback. He is playing the division round. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Matt Stafford, Jaden Daniels, who's incredible. We can't treat him like a rookie this weekend, in my opinion. He proved last week. And then Jared Goff, obviously, is playing well for the Lions. So no surprise to see of these final teams left, it's the teams with some of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League.
Yeah, no. It certainly is. And what did we learn, if anything, last week about, like if you go back in recent history.
Don't pay Sam Darnold. Oh, sorry.
That's for the Gambling Group Chat. We can get Will wound up with that. But one thing we've learned since the playoff format expanded in 2020, that the underdogs that have won outright in the wild card round, they're 1-7 outright, straight up, in the divisional round. So if you're thinking that the Texans or the Rams, or there was one other underdog that won outright, Washington, thank you. The Commander. You think one of those 3 teams have a great chance to win? History, at least recent history, under this format says no. And if you go back over the last 10 years, you're looking at a bigger sample, 2-15 straight up. So I think there are going to be a lot of arguments made this weekend for potentially the Eagles to be that home favorite that loses to the Rams, who won last week as a dog.
Nope.
But more on that later in the show. But if we were to get one of those big favorites to lose, the Chiefs or the Lions, or even the Eagles, if you want to throw that in there too, which one do you think is the most susceptible potentially to get picked off?
Even though I like the Eagles to win and cover, it would be the Eagles, right? Like, look at their offense last weekend. It was one drive off that opening turnover that the Packers had, and then one drive where Goddard went Hulk smash.
Right.
Otherwise, it was punts and field goals. If they do that again this weekend, they could lose this game. I don't think they're going to, but that to me, the Chiefs are not losing, sorry, and the Lions are not losing. They're both off a bye. They're not losing their home games to, as you mentioned, teams that historically have not won this weekend after winning the first weekend. My takeaway is also, Bear, from opening weekend, and we saw this in the College Bowl playoff, having home field advantage in that first game matters a lot.
Yes.
Look at the results in college football. We had basically 4 blowouts with home field advantage, and look at last weekend. We basically had all blowouts but one for the home team, right? And so like that's so important to have that early game at home. And we've seen the success early on, and whether that changes the way we wager next season or future seasons, that's my takeaway from opening weekend is maybe we should put more credence into the home team covering those games.
What would you say to somebody who says what you learned last week with the Eagles? How much of that was raw? Their offense was bad because of Russ. Jalen Hurts didn't practice for 20 days or whatever because of, like, is that, I don't think it's as easy as that, right?
I don't think so. I just think they have games this year where they're not very good. Not a lot of guys were open. There wasn't rhythm in the passing game. The offensive line blocked well. We know they're good. They ran the ball. Look, if Barkley scores at the very end, that game is 29-10, right? So like maybe look at the game a little bit differently. Right. But when they've had games this year where they played poorly like that offensively, the next week it's a little bit better. So I do think we'll get better Eagles this weekend. But yeah, it looked off. Like we saw other teams off a bye, essentially a bye, right, who rested their starters. Buffalo looked crisp. The Rams looked crisp. And the Eagles did not.
Now, Gambling Group Chat. Jeff and I joined by Sammy P and Will Hill, and we're just going to start with the last game on Sunday. But I think it's the most highly anticipated game between the Ravens and the Bills. Ravens crushed Buffalo much earlier this year in the regular season meeting, and now the game opened up with the Bills as the favorite, and it is flipped now to Baltimore favored by 1.5, 1 depending on where you look. And Sammy, the next person to say I like Buffalo in this game is going to be the first that I've heard.
I'll be your Huckleberry, buddy. I
Nerd.
took 1.5 with the Bills. I'll be your nerd too. I'll be whatever you want me to be. I think Buffalo should be favored. I just do. And understand that while the Ravens do play to a high power rating, and they have for 2 years now, in the postseason, these games aren't played on calculators. Your quarterback has to be the guy. And that's why the Chiefs beat the Ravens last year when Baltimore was a 5-point favorite. Vegas loves the Ravens. Huge power rating. Oh, they're amazing. Has Buffalo given you any reason that they shouldn't be a home favorite? Josh Allen, by the way, 12-2 as a home dog in his career.
Yeah, first off, I don't like how submissive you were to Bear. That made me slightly uncomfortable, offering to be the Huckleberry. I don't know how I feel about that. We said the same thing this time last week. Hey, nobody likes the Packers. Guess what? Nobody needed to like the Packers. And granted, that game could have gone differently, but sometimes everybody is on one side and sometimes it wins. I just think it's a bad matchup for Buffalo. I think Baltimore, look, with their running game and Buffalo's lack of size on the defensive line, their inability to prevent explosive plays in the run game, I just think Henry and Lamar is more than Allen in anything Buffalo has. I think Harbaugh is the better coach. I do worry a little bit. Tucker, we haven't talked about the kicker in a while. They've been cruising these games. It was an issue most of the year. It's been forgotten about. Boy, if the game comes down to a 48-yard field goal, do you feel good about him making it? Not necessarily, but look, Bass has missed kicks too for Buffalo. Mm-hmm. I think Baltimore wins a close game. And look, that first meeting, 8 yards per play for Baltimore, 4 yards per play for Buffalo. Mm-hmm. It's only one game. It was in Baltimore. It was a while ago. It's enough for me to be on the Ravens here.
The game was September 30th. So I think if we can look at that game, and they're going to watch some of it, but obviously teams have changed since then. The thing that I find most fascinating about this game is this is going to be either one of these quarterbacks, this iteration of these teams, the first sort of big playoff game they've won, right? Because Baltimore's won playoff game, so is Buffalo, but they don't win the big one, and this is the big one. This is the big one, right? And this is basically a pickup. And so who makes the error? To Will's point, is there a special teams issue? Who has the fumble? I think Baltimore's probably better. I like what Josh Allen does to extend plays, obviously. Lamar does the same thing. So I don't really know which direction I feel best about in this game. There's some props I've ID'd, but I will tell you guys, there's attacks right now, and Josh Allen rushing attempts over and Lamar Jackson rushing attempts over. Josh Allen had 8 last week. Now, Mr. Trubisky took the kneel down, so it would have been more than that. They had kneel downs, but he had 7.5 was his number last week. He had 8. It's 8.5 this week. I was looking at those. Just be careful, sort of auto wager on these quarterback rushing props over. They've done it a lot. Lamar ran a lot last week. That was more of sort of a Service Academy game plan for Baltimore. They ran the ball a ton in that game. They didn't have to pass the football. They're going to pass the ball more in this game. So how does that sort of change the game plan? Zay Flowers, Bear, I think, has not practiced yet this week. So he's probably out. So again, I wish I could come on here with a big, strong take on who I'm picking, but both these teams will have to win this game for the first time. They haven't done this yet, guys.
And I think that's what makes it so hard to really have a super strong opinion in this game. You can play the game 20 times and get 20 different outcomes probably. Where were you, so much has been talked about with the Ravens and this defensive improvement. But if you look late in the season, this defensive improvement has come against Russell Wilson twice, Bailey Zappi, Tim Boyle, and Tommy DeVito, and the Texans, who offensively are a mess right now. Is the Ravens' defensive improvement real, or is it a byproduct of the quarterback poo-poo platter that they've been playing?
Well, don't disparage poo-poo platters there, Bear.
Oh, I'm a big poo-poo platter fan.
Nonetheless, I think both are sort of true here because Zach Orr, first-time defensive coordinator, we see, and the Eagles are a great example with Vic Fangio, it takes time defensively and offensively with a new coordinator to figure out first-time calling plays. So you can certainly say that the defense has gotten better over the season because of it. They've made some changes as well, structural changes, but you're right. They have not played great quarterbacks. But sometimes when you play Buffalo, it doesn't matter if you're in the right place. Look at the touchdown on fourth down that Josh Allen had to
improv.
Like, it just like doesn't matter. The Broncos were in the right place, and they got beat on an incredible throw, and more importantly, an incredible catch in the back of the end zone. So you might think you have Josh Allen, and you just don't. Now, Lamar in that situation tends to play with his legs a little bit more than Josh Allen does, but that's the thing about this game too. This fascinates me. Why I might just sit back and watch with nothing on it is that both quarterbacks can do these crazy things. You might be in the perfect position, Will, to get a stop, and then one of these quarterbacks does something outlandishly crazy, and that stop turns into a 50-yard gain.
Yeah, and you said something earlier that reminded me. I wanted to go back to it. Can we get the quarterback kneel out of the stat book? It shouldn't be a play. It doesn't help anyone. It just screws people over. It's not a real play. People shouldn't lose bets over it. I never win a bet because of it. So I am officially going to file that motion right now to have that looked at. The flip side of the quarterback strength of schedule, Bear. If you look early in the season, they played a murderer's row of quarterbacks: Mahomes, Allen, Burrow twice, Dak, and the Cowboys when they were healthy. So maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle where, hey, their strength of schedule was so difficult that now, it is partly the schedule, but part of it, maybe they were underrated just because they were playing such good quarterbacks.
Let's also remember this. The Bills were down 3 linebackers in that first meeting. So it's easy. I don't know, Jeff. You tell me, when 3 linebackers are out, is it easier to run the football?
Yes.
I didn't play in the NFL, but I'm going to guess the answer is yes. Look at me, right?
Yeah.
And Flowers being either hobbled or out is a big deal. I'll say this. The Ravens better not fall behind.
Yeah.
Because if they're down 7-0, 10-0, and have to throw themselves back into the game, likely without Zay Flowers, that's a problem.
I would agree. Like it feels like I don't want to say disrespect on Buffalo right now, but it just feels like this team is being counted out, and I think that's a dangerous thing. Because, like I said, for the first meeting when Henry ran for 200 against a depleted Bills defense, and it's still, I think it was wasn't it a 1-possession game in the third quarter? Like the Bills kind of got back into it a little bit. So I lean like if you had to I would take Buffalo with 1.5 at home if I had to play it, but it's something I'm really looking
here's one
forward
question.
to jumping in right away.
So if this is a neutral site game, Sammy, what's this? What's a number based off of what the line is now? 3 neutral site game?
On a neutral, it'd be Buffalo. Yeah, basically 2.5, 3, and they're saying that the game in Baltimore would be closer to 4.5.
And that feels way too high, doesn't it?
It does.
And that's why I think Buffalo would. I know I said I played nothing yet in this game, but Buffalo would be the play just based on that. Like if you told me that this game was 4.5, 5 in Baltimore, I'd take Buffalo in a heartbeat plus the 5 points.
Yeah, and it looks like it's going to be cold, but it looks like other than that, weather's going to be okay. Back down, more gambling group chat. I think the game where we talked about earlier with the Ravens and the Bills, it seems like a lot of people are looking at the Ravens in that game. And if you look at the game Sunday in Philadelphia, it feels like a lot of people are kind of pointing towards the Rams off of the big win Monday night and the Eagles' kind of spotty offensive performance and their win against Green Bay. So the Eagles right now, a 6-point favorite, rematch of a regular season game in which Saquon Barkley ran for 255 yards. The Eagles had a 481 to 290 time of possession advantage, average over 7 yards of play, really dominated the game. Will, what do we take away from that regular season meeting? Are there things there that the Rams can kind of pull a 180 and make this a game? Or do you expect more of the same from what we saw at SoFi about 6 weeks ago or so?
Yeah, I think it was like mid-November around there. If I were coaching the Rams, I would suggest not to allow Saquon Barkley to run for about 475 yards.
Good start.
That would be a nice start.
Yeah.
Look, if you're making the case for the Rams, you can make a good one. You've got a Hall of Fame quarterback, probably a Hall of Fame coach, and they've got a hell of a pass rush. They've done a nice job replacing Aaron Donald with a bunch of different pieces. So that's a lot. Quarterback, a coach, a pass rush. That being said, an LA warm weather team, outdoors, short rest, a crazy raucous environment in Philly. There's a little concern. Maybe Hurts, isn't 100%, but he didn't play well last week against the Packers, but every time the Packers scored, he responded, he scored. So maybe it was just rust that first half where he only had 39 yards passing. I think Philly wins the game by 7 to 10 points. I like Philly here, Sammy.
I hope you're right. My bread's buttered with Philly stock. I hope they win this game, and I hope they go to the Super Bowl. That would make me very, very happy. The thing that the Rams have been bad against for most of the year is power run. Line it up. We're going to cram it. They can't stop that. They are good against teams that want to drop back and throw the ball down the yard. They were very good against Minnesota. Yep. And Minnesota wanted to spread the ball around, get it to Jefferson, get it to Addison, Hawkinson. If you line up and bully the Rams, which the Eagles did already this season, you win the game. Just protect the football, Jeff. They should get out of there with a win and a cover.
Yeah, I think that everyone's going to look at the Rams, the way they played against Minnesota, and the way the Eagles played against the Packers, and just go, Rams. I would advise you not to. The matchup is bad for the Rams. You guys have mentioned it as well, but just think about like what the Rams do well defensively. And it's not a good defense, by the way. They have good pieces at times. They rush the passer well. Well, what do the Eagles do best? They blocked it. They block. Like, that's what they do. You saw the still images of that Eagles-Packers game where Jalen Hurts was just standing there by himself. Now, the Eagles have to figure out why no one's open. That's something they got to figure out this week. But the pass rush is not getting Jalen Hurts. And on the flip side, the Eagles' defensive line played incredible against the Packers. If they're able to affect Matt Stafford, what is the Rams passing game? Yeah, they have Puka Nacua is great, and Cooper Kupp is aging a little bit, and Higbee played well but got hurt. I don't know how his status is right now. Like, there's a path for the Rams because they're really well coached and they have a great quarterback, and those two things might be better than what the Eagles have at coach and quarterback. But the team itself and the style of game does lead me to believe the Eagles will win and cover this game. Now, do I trust Nick Sirianni? No. But I think the team itself is doing a really good job. He's letting the coordinators coach. And I do think we see a better Eagles offense this game. I know they didn't play well last week. They were a little sluggish at times. We've seen this season that when they're sluggish one week, they hear the criticism, and then they play better next week. So I think we get a better Eagles performance. It's cold. It's snowy. Rams now, shorter week, big win, right? Obviously a huge emotional win, technically on the road, back on the road again. I like the Eagles in this spot. Also, one prop I like to play with the Eagles when I think they're going to play well offensively is taking Gainwell, their backup running back. I took him over 9.5 rushing yards. He's going to see 5 to 6 to 7 carries, especially if Barkley needs a break and they're running the ball well. Doesn't take many carries to get over 9.5 yards. He's also the third down back. You get 3rd and 13. They run the ball often in that situation. So I played Gainwell over 9.5 rush yards.
How'd you like that slide by Barkley, Jeff? Did you like that? Good. That was great sportsmanship, was it not?
Oh my God. The thing about it is they're up 12. So if he scores, the game doesn't change. The defense has a few more reps.
They're rubbing it in.
But I had Jalen Hurts over over rushing yards, and I lost by half a yard. So the worst part was it was graded as a win. I got an email about 6 hours later saying we have corrected the mistake because he was over. Also, too, like Jalen Hurts doesn't run forward. He kept running sideways. If he just runs forward, go forward when you keep the ball. So yeah, that was painful. Is that even a team player though? They were up 12. Like, go up 19 doesn't change anything. Being sarcastic.
I'm being completely sarcastic. There was no need
I know you are, but people,
ridiculous.
People on the internet are praising him for being an unselfish player. To me, that's not really unselfish. I mean, just scored. At that point, what does it matter? You broken free. I'm sure everyone else would have liked you to
too
score.
Far. These guys have outsmarted themselves a lot with this stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, they totally have. And someone mentioned before about the Rams and Stafford. Like, they were 0 of 8 on 3rd down in that game. So in those obvious passing situations on 3rd down, they needed to make a play against the Eagles in that first meeting. They really couldn't. How does weather factor in here? Like,
well, it's the wind. It's
10 to 15, I think, is what they said.
The weather. So I'll reiterate this again as we get to the time of year when when games are mostly outdoors. There's a lot of weather issues. It's the wind, guys. The snow is not a problem. If it's aggressively raining, sure, it's a problem. But the wind, right? The wind is blowing. That obviously will affect the pass ability of a quarterback. Now, Stafford has a strong arm, better than Jalen. Like, in fact, to me, it would affect almost Jalen Hurts more than Matt Stafford. And then, that's the issue to me is just, and then, look, aggressive cold. We saw Miami struggle with it last year. Could Los Angeles have an issue with it? Yes, but they have played in games so far this season. They played in New York that was cold. They've other played games. But look, guys, the Rams offense, though, is worth questioning, right? They scored 20 points offensively against the Vikings, right? And then it was 13 against the Cardinals, 19 at New York, and that Thursday night game against the Niners with 12 points. Like, the offense has not played great. And now you go on the road to play Eagles defense. I just think it's a bad spot for the Rams.
Yeah, I think it's a bad matchup for the Rams. So we'll see. Any other thoughts, prop wise, side total wise, anything future wise with this with this game?
Not a prop, but just be careful, boys and girls. Super Bowl championships can be deceiving. And I think I told this story a couple months ago on this show. My favorite memory of football season is my Bears group thread getting a hold of Thomas Brown holding the Lombardi trophy. And they were all, that's the guy, Thomas Brown has the Super Bowl. You're going to hear a lot the next couple of days about Stafford and McVay and Kupp and winning a Super Bowl. They were even talking about it on the broadcast Monday night. Start showing Stafford holding the trophy. It was years ago. And the Rams also had a guy by the name of Aaron Donald on that team. Mm-hmm. So just because they won a Super Bowl multiple years ago doesn't mean they're good enough to win a Super Bowl this year. And the market clearly telling you that the Eagles are probably in a good spot here on Sunday.
It certainly could be Matthew Stafford's last game with the Rams. Who knows about Cooper Kupp? He's certainly someone who physically is nowhere near the player that he was when the Rams won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. So it could be the end of an era in Los Angeles should the Rams come up short in Philly on Sunday. But speaking of the current reigning two-time Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, they are home against the Texans, a team that they beat, 27-19 a few weeks back. And again, it was a weird type of game too. It never felt like the Chiefs were really in trouble, but it was a 1-point game late in the third quarter, despite Kansas City having an 8-minute time of advantage. It was the middle of that weird stretch where the Chiefs had 3 games in 11 days. The Chiefs have lost, 2 home playoff games under Mahomes. One was to Tom Brady and the Patriots in overtime. And then the other one was to Joe Burrow in a game that they really had in their hands in overtime that had, and then totally botched before the end of the first half. Could have been up a lot more. So I have a hard time, Will, thinking that the Texans go in here and win this game. Again, we talked about it on the college pod about how a Chiefs, Lions, Ohio State moneyline parlay was minus 112. Like, square, yes. Public, yes. But it feels like it's going to take a little bit of an effort for one of those underdogs to win outright. Like, I certainly don't think the Texans can go in here and win the game.
Yeah, throw in the Eagles too. Why not? It's the year of chalk. All these favorites are winning. And just throw in the Eagles. Why the hell not? Yeah, that game was. It's interesting. It was a Saturday afternoon game, and if you remember, like a month or so ago, Mahomes wasn't going to play. He had a high ankle sprain. Who knows? Can he save him for the playoffs? Then he comes out. He runs for the first touchdown. He's completely fine. So just interesting to look back.
You played him for his touchdown, right? That game?
I did not. I have played him many times. That was not one of them because, of course, but it's interesting too. They played a few days later on Christmas, and we haven't seen them since. They get the whole break between week 17 and week 18 from the Wednesday to the next Sunday, and then they rest everyone week 18. So this is an inordinate amount of rest. This is an unusual amount to be sitting. I don't want to say, hey, it's rust. It's a negative because they could come out and just look sharp. Andy Reid knows how to, monopolize that time and use it properly. But man, it is almost like a month off. That being said, Mahomes, home field advantage, rest, Andy Reid. There's a lot of reasons to like the Chiefs, but they are certainly taxing you. 8.5, 9 points. The Chiefs really don't beat anybody by double digits. So I think this is a little too high. If anything, I would take the Texans. I think the thing I like most of all here is the under, because the Texans are good on defense, a beat up offensive line, limited weapons. I don't know who they're throwing the ball to. It's basically Nico Collins and Deontay Johnson played for them last week. He has the ability to somehow get cut by a different team every day. I'm sure by the time people listen to this, he'll be cut by 3 more teams. So, not a good offensive line, not good weapons, good D. To me, like a 24-17 type of game, Sammy.
I think the line of the week I've heard so far is from our friend Will Brinson, who I love dearly. He said the Chiefs should be -4 and the money line should be -5,000. That's a really, really funny comment because they're not covering these big numbers. I mean, north of 7 this year, they're 0-5-1 ATS. And in the Mahomes era, the number's 22, 32, and 3. I saw those from Steve McAdoo, who put those trends out. That's not the largest sample size, but it's big enough. I'm not betting side or total. Let me tee you up here, Geoff. What are we doing with this Kelsey 51.5 receiving yardage number?
All overs for Kelsey. All overs for Kelsey. I'm actually most excited to take the Chiefs like +2 when Baltimore shows up if they win that game. I saw that the look ahead line. Please give me 2 points. Look, a couple things on the rest quickly. So a lot of the starters actually played a tiny bit in Week 18. Like the offensive lineman, for example, played. They started. They didn't play the whole game. So like not the entire team has had rest. But I will say, this is the healthiest Chiefs defense we'll have all season because Watson's back, their second corner, who's been without him, it's been a problem on defense. Ameni Hughes back. The entire defense is healthy, which is rare for this time of season. And of course, Mahomes and Kelsey, and we saw Xavier Worthy start to pick up his play, and Hollywood Brown. Like, it's a complete Chiefs team now. Now, the rest, the question becomes, I think, just a connection between Mahomes and like a rookie and Worthy, Mahomes to Hollywood Brown. Humphreys, he playing left tackle? Is he not? I mean, there's some questions offensively, I think, that could matter with 24 days off. To Sammy's point, though, the question that is answered for many years now is Travis Kelce, when he gets rest, the next game, he is absolutely incredible in the playoffs. He gets tons of targets. He's had 8 opportunities since 2019 in this moment, right, where he's had the week off prior, essentially. He has had at least 10 targets in 6 of those games. The other 2, he had 6, by the way. Those were in Super Bowls. At least 6 catches, Sammy, and a ton of yards. Like, he's the go-to guy in the postseason off rest. He said during the week about how rejuvenated he feels and how he's excited to play. Like, I think that Kelsey in these moments is always someone that Mahomes targets. I think you could go over and most of his props this week and feel good about it.
You should bet them now, though.
I did.
We've talked about this the last 2 weeks, whether it was the Derrick Henry rushing touchdown in Week 18. What was last week? The Barkley catches number, which went from -150 to -220. They both got there. They were both hairy as hell, but you want to lay good prices and you want to bet good numbers. This Kelsey number by game day is not going to be 51.5. And here's another number for Travis Kelsey, +160 to score a touchdown you can get right now.
Yeah.
We've seen him -115, -120 in Super Bowls. He's like Gronk, man. I don't want to compare them head to head, but you just need to keep him healthy for these moments, and they raise their game.
And that's what you've talked about, Jeff, throughout the year. Like they actually know that.
Like, it's go time now.
It's go time now.
Yeah.
And speaking of go time, it's go time for the Detroit Lions off of an idle week last week, the home field throughout the playoffs. They are a 9.5 point favorite over the Washington Commanders, fresh off the upset win in Tampa. And this is our Super 6 game of the week presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. We'll have the column coming out later in the week. And one of the questions, obviously easy, what will the outcome of this game be? Lions to win by 10 or more, or the Commanders to get the cover or the outright win? Again, I actually see a path. Like, if you're looking at the two big favorites, I see a path here for the Commanders to win much more than I do Detroit, because I think in a game like this, you're looking at a pretty high variance game. You're looking at two coaches and 2 offenses that love to go for it. So, like, I don't think you're going to see a lot of punts. I don't think you're going to see, one of the props I actually wrote up in the column was the longest field goal in the game to be under 46.5 yards. Because if you get in that area between like the 35 and the 45-yard, like, they're going to go for it. They're 4th and 4, they're going. They're not kicking a 53, 54-yard field goal. So that was one prop that I looked at in playing this game. So I don't know if it means that we're going to get an over, but I would not expect to see a lot of the special teams on the field in this game, which I think by virtue of that, those leverage plays, it gives the underdog a much better chance to win this game. Will you see any reason at all to maybe just a little trickle of money line on the Commanders here? Because, I mean, even look last week in Tampa didn't force a single punt.
I do not. I think Detroit might score basically every time they touch the ball. It's just, that's a bad place to go when you don't have a good run defense. That's a loud building. They're so good on offense. Campbell's teams are never flat. That building won't let you be flat. I just think this happens. There's pretty much one or two every year where we see the team on wild card weekend win. It's a standalone game. They win. There's some sentiment for that team. Oh, they're getting points the next week. People forget there's a reason the team they're playing is home and off and, all of this stuff. There's a reason they're the 1 seed. I just think, like, I'm not dying to lay the 8.5, 9.5 with Detroit or whatever it is. And you could shop around some of these. I think it's with the teaser protection bumping up to the 9.5. I could see a scenario where it's 14-point game late, 17-point game late, and Daniels has the ball. And hey, if you're only up 14, he might get in the back door. If you're up 17, you're good, because he could be a good backdoor quarterback with his ability to run. And Detroit's got a shaky defense. Under 5.5 punts, I think, is good. I think Detroit gets well into the 30s here. If anything, I'd lay it here with the Lions.
Will, before you get going, to echo on what Will was saying, if you go back over the last 10 years in the playoff, underdog winners in the wild card round, 2-15 straight up on the field against the divisional opponent. So that proves a point. Like, maybe it's 7-10 against the number, so it's a little more 50-50. But very rarely do you see these underdog winners in the wild card round go on the road and do it again.
I still think Washington can score, though. And that leaned me into a play on the Commanders team total over 22.5. A little juicy, -15. Not the end of the world. Some offshore shops, are already 23.5. Cannot talk. 23.5 at a couple places offshore. Dan Quinn's turned into an aggressive fourth down offensive coach. I mean, they went for it on fourth down 23 times this year, and they converted 20 of them. 20 out of 23 on fourth down. That's regular season. They set the tone against Tampa. They go for it on fourth and short right out of the gate. Didn't get it, but eventually got 2 more fourth and shorts, which is why they won the game. So, look, man, could Detroit win this game by 20? Yeah, but I'm hoping it's 47-27 or 51-31 or something like that. And if Detroit scores, Jeff, Washington's going to score. Like, scoring for Detroit is good for Washington to score. I don't want 24-10. I want a shootout.
Yeah, I lean toward a shootout, but I will say, though, if the fourth down monster strikes and you're 1 for 5 on fourth down, this game goes under, right? Like, that's the only thing about the total. Like, both teams go for it on a fourth down. Yeah. If it's a horrendous fourth down day, points are not going to be scored. I wrote about 2 props in my article this week up on Fox Sports, same as Bear, Will, Sammy, we all contribute there. I like Jaden Daniels' 2 over props. I like his over pass attempts, which is 34.5. It's a high number, but to the point all 4 of us are making, he has to pass the football in this game for them to keep up. And if they're behind in the game, he passes the ball even more. I don't need complete. I need pass attempts. It's a high number. It's a bar that's going to be high. And then over 9.5 rush attempts. Sort of the same idea where you got to use his legs. And fourth down, Sammy mentioned it, right? They go for it on a fourth down a lot. A lot of those is Jay Daniels using his legs. And so I think it just has to be Jay Daniels' game. And whether it's pass or run, I mean, he's going to have to account for a large majority of how they get their yards. So I like those 2 Daniels props.
Yeah, certainly Daniels uses his leg. A lot of Lamar Jackson uses his leg, but mostly we talk about the quarterbacks using their arms, and that takes us to another Super 6 question that is out there this week, sponsored by DraftKings Sportsbook. Which quarterback in the divisional round is going to throw for the most passing yards? And you got 4 options: Jared Goff, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Matthew Stafford. I think the answer is obvious there. It's got to be Jared Goff, right?
For which one?
Most passing yards in the divisional round by a quarter. Goff indoors, Mahomes outside against the Texans, Lamar Jackson in Buffalo, and then Matthew Stafford.
What if they're up big in the second half and just run the football? That's more the concern.
Yeah, and maybe you think the Rams fall way behind and Stafford just has to play catch up and ends up throwing it 42, 43 times, and you get the volume that way. So that's a tricky handicap.
But Goff though could get a lot of yards on screen passes too, which are very cheap yards, which they do better than a lot of teams. So I wouldn't mind Goff there. Do we think David Montgomery plays? Maybe, but if I were the Lions, I'd save him.
I would too.
I wouldn't play him. I mean, you can't. It's a playoff game, so you really can't say that in my opinion. But you can think that in your head, and like maybe he's active but doesn't play very much, and just sort of there, like we get him a couple reps. But I don't think we see a full Montgomery workload. I mean, Gibbs is so good by himself. They don't need a number 2. It's great to have a 1-2 monster, but they don't need that. Gibbs himself is plenty good enough.
Sammy, have you noticed? I haven't looked at the props in this game for Gibbs. Are they off? Are they maybe factoring in that Montgomery may play and there might be a little bit of value on some of these Gibbs props? Again, I haven't looked, so I'm just throwing it out there to maybe one of you guys who may have.
So the market at least is telling us that Montgomery is likelier to play than maybe we thought, because there was a number on Gibbs, I think Tuesday, minus $4 to score a touchdown, which I laughed at. Pretty funny. Minus 400.
Sure, why not?
Game. But that's now down to minus 350. It's down. Some books have 250. DraftKings has 235. So that would tell me that somebody came in and bet some Montgomery, which would lower the price. The problem with a lot of these prices, guys, as you know, most of these books don't give you the no.
Right.
You could never deal minus $4 yes if you don't, or you could never deal that if you gave the no, because people would just bet the no. But it has come down substantially from minus $4 to minus 350 to some pops in the $2 range. Yeah, I love this Gur-off. That's what I'm calling it. It's a Gur-off between Quinn and Campbell. I love it.
Boneless wings, all you can eat. But again, to Jeff's point earlier about like the receiving yards, like I wonder if maybe like there is a rushing and receiving yard combined prop for Gibbs that maybe took a little bit of a hit, and if he's going to play more, then that might be
that number's got to be tremendously high.
It's got to be tremendously high.
114.5.
Yeah, I was going to guess 125. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Over easy. 114.5 to 125.
I'm not touching
that. That's a no sweat easy winner.
Oh yeah. Odd subject to change though, as usual.
Always odd subject to change. Guys, appreciate you. I hope you have a great divisional round. I'll be back again next week to kick around the AFC and NFC championship games.
Welcome back to the show. We're going to finish with our best bets in a second, Bear. That Ravens-Bills game, man, I got nothing still. I don't know how to play this game. I know we talked about it a lot in the Gambling group chat, but I got wagers for every other game. I've made nothing in this game. I don't know where to go.
I don't know. Like it's one of those coin flip type games where we saw the regular season game, like we talked about, and it was an emphatic Ravens win. But so much about the injuries. It was so long ago. It feels like the Ravens are the team that everybody is picking not only to win this week, but to win next week in Kansas City and then win the Super Bowl. So it's a lot of weight for Lamar Jackson to kind of erase a lot of those narratives.
It is, and I'm excited for that game. Obviously, the best game of the weekend. We'll get one other one that I think might surprise people, even though I do like the favorites in a lot of those games. Hope it's not the first one, but let's get to your best bet, Bear. We've had a good run here for best bets. What is yours this weekend?
Another game we discussed off the top. We discussed throughout the show. I like the Eagles minus the 6 against the Rams. I know I'd love for it to hit 5.5 again, but we got to go with the numbers that are posted right now. I'm going to lay the 6. Look, I know you don't want to overreact from the first meeting, but again, it just did not look like a great matchup for the Rams. You look at the Eagles, their offensive line. Look at the scoring drives they had in that first game. 12 plays, 10 plays, 10 plays, 8 plays, 12 plays. Rams couldn't get them off the field. The Eagles just wore them down, both sides of the ball. You look at the forecast for Sunday afternoon, snow flurries, temperatures in the 20s, windy. It just feels like you go in again, the warm weather, the dome, everything that the Rams have been dealing with on and off the field for the last couple of weeks. It just does not feel like a good spot at all for the Rams. And I'm going to lay the points with the Eagles and hope that Jalen Hurts performance last week wasn't a forebearer of things to come.
Your inner excellence is showing right now with the Philadelphia Eagles. I just think the matchup for the Rams is bad. I know that people are going to jump on them because they won last weekend, and they absolutely deserve the utmost credit for it.
They were great.
But again, sort of like the same thing with what I mentioned with other teams. They scored 20 offensive points. That was it. Like they scored the 7 on defense too. Like it wasn't the crispest game. Before that, it was 13, 12, 9, 19 points. It wasn't their offense has sputtered a little bit.
Game of the Giants in the Meadowlands. That was a cold weather
Jets game. Yeah. It took them a while to get on sort of on the winning track there. So I'm with you on the Eagles. I think they play better and just their lines are really good. And when their lines are good against the Rams, I think you have a good chance here. All right, Bear. My best bet is a prop.
Like it.
The Kansas City Chiefs.
Are we allowed to give props as best bets? We got yelled at for that one.
I know we did. Yeah. I'm giving an exotic wager, Bear, for a best bet. I'm going to do it. Rest is good in the National Football League.
Yes.
And maybe no player in the postseason has shown rest, the value of rest, like Travis Kelce. I'm going over Kelce 5.5 receptions. One, he's talked about this week how excited he is to play again. And just mentally getting that time off helps. But also look, in this Chiefs playoff run, since 2019 season, he's had 8 games where he's had a week or 2 rest, right? He has at least 6 targets in all of those, but those are 2 Super Bowls. Otherwise, it's 10 plus targets in the regular playoff games. And he's had at least 6 catches in all those games, all 8 of those games. So he's shown that when he is fresh, he's a different football player. Also, I think when the playoff comes too, Mahomes just looks for him more often. He's this guy.
He knows who exactly.
Look, against Houston in 2016, he had 12 targets, 10 catches. Cleveland in the first game of the next year, 10 targets, 8 catches. Jacksonville 2 years ago, 17 targets, 14 catches. And last year in the postseason against the Dolphins, in that cold weather game.
And that Jacksonville game was the game that Mahomes got hurt.
Yes.
In, right? So clearly he's going to look for more there.
10 targets, 7 receptions against the Dolphins last year in that cold game after the bye. So I like Travis Kelce over 5.5 receptions.
Yeah, and you mentioned that he's the guy that he knows. But again, I think the fact that you've had Xavier Worthy be much more a part of the offense lately, you've had a Gray be much more a part of the Hollywood, like all the other guys being there, demand more attention. And there's 87 sitting in there. Just
that rest, man. I'm telling you guys, it's you saw with the Rams even last week. Just like how fast they played, mentally, that break off feels so good for a player like Travis Kelce. So I'm glad to see them the Chiefs back this weekend. So I got Kelce there.
Yeah, no, you don't want to root for anybody or say I hope, but I think as an NFL fan, you hope that the Chiefs do win that game and you get the Chiefs versus Buffalo or Baltimore AFC Championship game. It'll be a
common known as the Arrowhead Invitational.
Exactly right. We'll see if the Chiefs can get back and go for that three-peat. So appreciate everybody for tuning in again. FS1, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, our YouTube channel. Thanks to Jeff. Thanks to Sammy. Thanks to Will. We will be back next week. And remember, the less you bet, the more you lose when you win.